We do need to continue to work on sharing our mission in supporting vulnerable people, but we also need to move from conversations about contracting to real engagement, planning and working together. And what I want to do is to offer you some examples of that. Because I think over the last 5 years particularly, we have done a lot of learning together about how we actually have approached the understanding of need in local communities, the shaping, the designing of services, and the involvement of local families. And the first example I want to share with you, and signal for the future as a signpost, is the very real importance of engagement. Now, we've been focusing a lot this morning about the emotional health and well-being of young people, but we need to actually think fundamentally about early childhood as well. And what is actually happening in early childhood, and how do we ensure that the seeds of health and well-being are sown both in our early childhood services and also within our schools. And what I would suggest to you in terms of the children's centres is that actually did provide us with a real watershed in learning how to do things differently. And I know that there was quite a lot of debate and discussion and concern at the time that perhaps we were engaged in a really big and quite complicated bureaucratic process. But what that process actually did was to genuinely involve lots of people in local communities. And we established 43 children's centres across the county. And right from day one, parents, children, local people were actually involved in those discussions. We are now sort of 4 years down the line, and in terms of the engagement of those local communities, they are still very much really genuinely engaged, both in monitoring and evaluating what's actually happening in the centres, commenting on whether the centres are still actually delivering services which meet need, participating in the formal processes around identifying providers and tendering. And that really, for me, I suppose, is an example in action, what I think and I interpret as the government saying, you know, citizens needing to hold services to account in local communities. The next signpost I want to offer to you, it's sort of headed enabling and procurement, big words, but what I actually want to talk about, what's been happening on the ground with a deprivation subsidy, which we had from the previous government, and in Devon was badged as Don't Stop Me Now. This was funding to be administered via schools to families who were in receipt of free school meals. Big challenge in our county, because a lot of parents who are eligible for free school meals do not actually want to come forward to actually register for free school meals. Stigma again. You know, what do we do about this? But in order to be able to access this very small pot of money for individual children, actually families did have to register for free school meals. And what did we see? We actually saw a take-up in terms of registering, even though the parents then didn't take the free school meals, but what they did take was the disadvantaged subsidy. And there, I think, are some real nuggets of learning that we don't want to lose from that experience. Because what we did was very much around working with the local schools in setting up a very, very simple process whereby, through the use of vouchers, children could access a whole range of activities, things which actually gave them a sense of self-worth. Things where they could actually grow in confidence, fill those spaces, and things which I think are the stuff that we're talking about this morning in terms of what we all feel as human beings as being, giving us a sense of ourselves in the world. What those examples have given to us around the county, and I'll talk a little bit more about some actual experiences, is that it's meant that we've actually worked with, indirectly, a lot of children. And you can see there the take-up, the 1st of November 2010, nearly 6,000 children across the county involved. You can see the amount of funding which has gone in to support that, but also, and I think what's really important here, when I go back to the signpost in terms of enabling and procurement, this is the role of the local authority, if you like, working differently in local communities, talking to local providers, actually brokering, if you like, matching the needs with the services, and identifying a whole range of providers who perhaps previously were unknown, even to the local schools. And you can see there we have 436 providers involved. I think as well in relation to that, what we've been able to do is to ensure that local providers at the very local level have had access to support around safeguarding, about health and safety requirements, and we have really tried to facilitate their engagement. Some of these providers have been as large as the Youth Hostel Association, some have been as small as the local sailing club, or even the local Scouts group. And a real sense, I think, of what the big society is all about in action. Just want to share a few of the very personal stories of children who've been engaged in these opportunities. And the first one, which you can read for yourselves, is an example of a young person who lives in the Tavistock area. But again, some of the words that people have used this morning, new activities. This is about giving children and young people opportunities that we would all expect for our own children. Helping young people to grow in their strength and determination. Making friends, seems happier. And this is a young person who clearly had issues in her family in terms of relationships, in terms of family separation.